Hey, everybody, and welcome to the first Bitcoin for Beginners of 2026. We're going to be following a little bit of a different format today. In the past, we've kind of mixed Bitcoin for Beginners with a bit of a deep dive on some topics in Bitcoin. This year, we're just going to be focusing on beginner topics for Bitcoin in these presentations. We'll have Bitcoin deep dives and Bitcoin kind of for higher net worth, maybe more sophisticated investment types on different sessions every month. So this session is going to be just Bitcoin for Beginners, a deep dive on all things that you got to know about to get started on Bitcoin. I'm going to be joined today. Let's see if we can get our presentation slides up here. I'm going to be joined today by Zach Adair. So the two of us from Bitcoin Wallet are going to be helping you get everything that you need to know about Bitcoin. If you're just starting with Bitcoin, you have questions about it, this is a place to be. Maybe you've been in Bitcoin for a little bit, but you're like, why exactly is Bitcoin different from other cryptocurrencies or from government money or from gold, which has been having pretty big moves in the last few weeks? What really makes Bitcoin special? What makes Bitcoin secure? And how do you get started with Bitcoin? These are all the things we're going to be talking about today. To everyone who's been who's joined already, thank you very, very much. And I guess we can get started. Let's see. We're using a new software here, so I'm a little bit of a tech tech challenged at times, but we've got a great presentation ready for you here. Zach, we can throw that up on screen. How do we do that? There we go. Okay, so yes, this is Bitcoin for Beginners. We are just focusing on Bitcoin and kind of helping you become better at Bitcoin in these topics. Nothing too advanced today. And if you have any questions that come up for the presentation, please write them in chat. Zach is going to be able to make sure that these all get relayed to you, and all your questions will be answered. We really want to make sure that everyone here who has a question is going to get an answer, is going to walk away feeling a little bit more confident, a little bit better understanding Bitcoin. How I like to kind of look at Bitcoin, especially in terms of comparing it to government money and other assets, is kind of against three main categories. And inflation is something that we've all really been battling over the last few years. We've seen prices rise, grocery store items get more expensive, but they never really get cheaper. And why is that? Is that something to do with, grocery stores being greedy? Are apples really becoming more expensive? Or is our money failing us, our government money failing us? I think it's the latter. We'll dive into that. Censorship resistance also kind of highlights how Bitcoin is different from our traditional banking system. If I want to send money to Zach, I have to ask my bank permission to send money to Zach's bank. And either one of these banks can say, no, you're not allowed to do that. And they can basically censor my transactions. If I'm participating in something that they don't like, it can be stopped. Bitcoin works a little bit differently than that. And I've been saying these things about how Bitcoin is, in some ways better or is superior to government money. It's better than inflation somehow. We'll dive into that. It's better than censorship resistance. How do I know these things to be true? Well, that's because Bitcoin, you don't have to trust anyone. You don't have to trust me for Bitcoin to work. You just trust in math, and math is transparent. Math is unchanging. Math is not emotional like humans. So math remains constant, and that is the foundation of Bitcoin, is in math. And that's why Bitcoin is incredibly stable. And all the other things about Bitcoin we know to be true because it's all in the math. Let's dive into it. So inflation, for those of you that might not be familiar, this chart here represents the inflation in the United States over the last about 15 years. The blue line, what actually that is the number of dollars in the economy. And these gray bars kind of are highlighting certain periods of economic crashes. If you look at this first gray bar, the wider one, we can see a little bit of a jump. And that basically is the kickstart of this thing called quantitative easing. What that is just fancy banker talk for the banks, the central bank specifically, is printing money out of thin air and then distributing it to whoever they think needs it to stimulate or protect the economy, right? So instead of these failing banks or failing companies just failing because they were running inefficiently, now the government and the central banks are bailing them out. This was a pretty controversial thing that happened almost 20 years ago. And what do we have happen during COVID? We can see a smaller gray line, yet the blue line shoots up. And what this means is that lots of money printing happened during COVID. And the blue line kept flying up because they kept printing money. They kept handing it out to various folks. Some of the people listening here may have received it, like many people received checks in the mail, government stimulus checks, right? And what happened around the time of all this money printing? Asset prices started to soar. Grocery prices started to soar. Automobile prices started to soar. Housing prices, everything started to soar. And is it that everything started to get more expensive, or was our currency worth less? And that's kind of the argument that we're talking about here, is that we had inflation that was being done intentionally. And this actually isn't good for us. Like, the price of everything at the grocery store going up isn't good for me. It's not good for everyone. The price of houses going up might be good for some folks that own houses, but it means me, a younger guy looking to buy my first home, I see this as an insurmountable challenge because houses keep going up in value or up in price. And what the truth of this is that each unit of currency is actually becoming worth less over time because they're making so much of it, right? Like, let's say a currency unit is a cup of water, right? And a cup of water starts off being full. But as that water starts to, evaporate from that cup over time, now that cup is half empty. I'm going to need more than that 1 cup of water to drink that and feel like I've quenched my thirst. I might need 3 cups. Then if the cup is like barely anything left in that, if there's barely anything left in that cup of water, I'm going to need lots of cups of water to quench my thirst. This same, analogy applies for currency units, dollars, buying things at the grocery store. All of a sudden, you need way more units of currency or dollars to buy a loaf of bread and some meat at the grocery store and some eggs, right? So this is because the money is losing value on purpose. It's not good for us. And it's actually good for the government because the government has all this debt, way too much debt. But if you're devaluing each currency unit, then it makes it feel like the debt is actually worth less over time. And this disproportionately benefits the governments, which is why we need to kind of combat inflation ourselves by investing or by pursuing better assets. And that's why we choose certain scarce assets. So when we're talking about Bitcoin being a scarce asset, how do we know that's true? Because we can see the amount of dollars that are made, and those are going up over time. What does the amount of Bitcoin look like over time? So this chart here looks a little bit different than what you've just seen. We see this gold line kind of going up and up and up, and then it starts to kind of flatten out. This is the new Bitcoins that are being created. And what we see is that a lot were made in the first few years, and then it starts to taper off. And we see even into the future, we know how much Bitcoin will be made, which we can't do with regular dollars. Nobody knows how many regular dollars will exist in the year 2030, but we know exactly, or very approximately, very close, how many Bitcoin will exist in the year 2030. And this is because the inflation or the amount of new Bitcoins being printed every year is not controlled by any person. It is controlled by the code or the math that I alluded to earlier. And this math limits the amount of new Bitcoin that can be made, which ensures that Bitcoin will be scarce. Bitcoin, there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. So that means if you own a certain amount of Bitcoin, your percentage of the total amount is actually going to remain very stable. That's why you might hear some Bitcoins, touting the term or touting the phrase 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, because your Bitcoin will never be inflated. Like, for example, $100 in the past is worth way more than $100 today because dollars are not equal. Dollars are manipulated, are inflated, and they lose their value over time. So you're not able to even a dollar 100 years ago is a completely different unit of currency because dollars 100 years ago used to actually be backed by gold. So you can't even say that $1 equals $1 because they change over time and they're intentionally inflated over time. Bitcoin, you can't say 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin because Bitcoin remains scarce and your Bitcoin will never be compromised. You know for sure that your Bitcoin will remain scarce. And that's one of the things that makes Bitcoin very special. The next thing that makes Bitcoin very special is how it compares to the ability to own and send it. So we don't send most of our money ourselves. Unless you're in person, if I'm in person handing cash to Zach, then I have done, a peer-to-peer type transaction. That means I gave the money directly to the other person and nobody else was really involved. But if most of us are sending money, it's probably being done through our banks because our banks hold all of our money nowadays. And if you want to send money, your bank is basically always going to be asking, is Konrad allowed to send this money? Did Konrad say something that upset somebody? Did Konrad upset the bankers? Did Konrad upset the president or the prime minister or some political order? And we've seen this happen in Canada. We had the truckers' protest where truckers were protesting due to various COVID restrictions. If anyone donated to those truckers, their bank accounts were shut down. And in this day and age, if you can't spend, your ability to participate in the economy, your ability to travel, acquire medicine. Like your life is significantly compromised. It's a very dangerous thing, actually, to have all of your finances be completely censored. And this isn't the only form that this has happened. This has happened even in recent years, if you wanted to donate to a various political cause overseas. There are, humanitarian and war-based crises that are happening in Ukraine, in Israel, Palestine, in Sudan, all over the world. There are various conflicts, and donating to those can basically end you up on the wrong list where your financial transactions can become censored. This is against what Bitcoin is for. Bitcoin allows you to send these transactions. One last point as well is that about 100 years ago in the United States, the economy was in a rough point. This is before they invented quantitative easing, printing money. And what they did was they said, okay, everyone who owns gold, your gold now belongs to the US government. Like just overnight, they call this Executive Order 6102. And basically everyone who had gold in a bank, it immediately and instantly belonged to the US government. There's nothing you could do about it. Folks that held their gold, maybe buried in their backyard, in a safe at home, they were able to just hold on to it and kind of get away with it. But what Executive Order 6102 shows is that when the government is in trouble, they will come and take property, financial assets, whatever it may be, from their citizens. And this is something that I think folks ought to be careful of. If you have stocks or gold or Bitcoin in a bank, you might want to think about self-custodying that, not leaving that in the bank, but controlling it yourself. And then you get a benefit from Bitcoin's true principles. Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning there is no CEO, there's no president, there's no top bank. The Bitcoin network is controlled by tens of thousands of people simultaneously. You can think of it as rules without rulers. There's no one person in charge, but everyone can simultaneously enforce all these rules. By virtue of Bitcoin being decentralized, it means there's no one in charge to say, no, this transaction cannot go through. That means that your Bitcoin, when it's held in self-custody, is truly unconfiscatable. Nobody can stop your transactions from being sent. Nobody can take the Bitcoin from your wallet. You are actually fully in control. You can even think of it as Bitcoin is the only thing you can truly own because it cannot be taken away from you. And anything else that can be taken away from you with the stroke of a pen or the wave of a gun or a baton or handcuffs, then that truly doesn't really belong to you. But you cannot take Bitcoin. It lives in cyberspace. It is not controlled by any single entity. And that gives you unparalleled freedom and independence. Like you are actually fully in control. Like you can move anywhere in the world with your money. You could spend your money in any way you want. And you are actually in control of your own finances, your own money, and your own destiny. And that's what you work towards. You work hard to save your work in the form of some sort of financial asset, whether it's dollars in a savings account or Bitcoin in self-custody. And how you choose to store that depends on how you're able to use your savings in the future. And so if your Bitcoin isn't held in self-custody, there's nobody that can stop you from using it. And that's incredibly liberating. How do I know these things? Am I just some guy that's, has a strong hunch? Well, not really. I actually can prove all of my claims. And that is because of how Bitcoin is governed. Our society, the companies that we all work for, are governed by people. They have CEOs, we have presidents. And as we've seen the past, in any political or corporate organization, is that the people in charge can change their minds. They can be reelected. They can be fired. They can get sick. Various things can happen to people where their cognitive ability changes, their perception changes, and that impacts the people that they govern. So if you have a president that changes their mind, if you have a CEO that changes their mind, that could stop you from being able to use your own money. You could have a 6102 attack where financial assets are seized. You could have big bank accounts being frozen like happened in Canada. But with Bitcoin held in self-custody, these things cannot happen. And we know that for a fact because Bitcoin is just math. Bitcoin is just a bunch of code that everybody decides to run voluntarily. And all this code stipulates is the rules of Bitcoin. And everyone automatically checks and enforces these rules. For example, on screen, earlier I was talking about how Bitcoin has a fixed inflation rate and it decreases over time, and there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. This is kind of like a strange thing to claim. We're always discovering new oil and new gold all over the place. So how can we decide that there's only going to be a certain amount of Bitcoin? Like I can copy and paste a photo infinite amount of times. How can I ensure that Bitcoin, which is digital, is actually going to be limited in its supply? So this is where Bitcoin's kind of magic really starts to shine, is because Bitcoin has these very transparent rules that govern all of these things. They govern how transaction rules are decided. They govern how new Bitcoin are being added into the total supply, which is what this code on screen describes. You can see in the center of the code, it says amount subsidy equals 50 times coin. You see things like, I'm just kind of just skimming in here, halvings. The halvings are kind of when the Bitcoin protocol decides to cut the Bitcoin inflation rate in half. Essentially, this is a snippet, an example of one of Bitcoin's rules that governs everything about Bitcoin. And there's many of these different rules. This is just one example I've shown for you here. But these rules govern Bitcoin. These rules are what make Bitcoin decentralized. They're what make Bitcoin scarce. They're what makes Bitcoin censorship resistant. They're what guarantees that when you hold Bitcoin in self-custody in a wallet that only you control, you are in the sole control of your Bitcoin. That's what these rules guarantee. And that's really what makes Bitcoin special and unique. Nothing else in the world does this. So how do we control? How do I use my Bitcoin so that nobody else can use it? That's kind of where Bitcoin's seed phrases come in. This is kind of the magic of using Bitcoin. You'll see here on my screen, I got 24 words, and each of these words basically represent the password to your Bitcoin. If you think of an email address has a password and then you can access all the emails, it's kind of what this is like. This is a password for your Bitcoin wallet, which allows you to access all of your Bitcoin in your wallet and make transactions with that. These words are actually very, very important to keep private. Normally, I'm displaying these words on my screen right now. You never, ever want to share these words with anybody. In fact, you don't even want to store these words digitally, just in case someone could be watching. There might be some sort of virus on a computer or something, because these words are in essence the key to your Bitcoin. And unlike a physical safe where if you have a key, you still have to access the safe. This key is digital, which means the Bitcoin itself is stored digitally. So anyone that accesses these keys can access your Bitcoin, which is fine. Us Bitcoiners know this, we're aware of this. And what we do is we just write these words down on a sheet of paper and we hide it. Or if we're really secure, you have like a little sheet of metal. You kind of just write it on that sheet of metal. That keeps those words very durable, and it's still in a physical state so nobody else can see it. And that kind of means that if I have a Bitcoin wallet like this is a Bitcoin wallet. If this wallet, a dog eats it, it rains, my house floods, and this wallet stops working, I can use these words and put them into another one of these Bitcoin wallets, a different Bitcoin wallet, and then I'll be able to recover all my Bitcoin. My Bitcoin will still be there. It's kind of like if my computer died and I use my email password and log in on a different computer, I can still access all my emails. Bitcoin kind of works that same way. It's like if you combine email with like the physical gold, that's why some people call Bitcoin digital gold. It kind of works like the two at the same time. A hot wallet is basically those words on like a phone. And we call that a hot wallet because my phone's always connected to the internet. My phone is secure, but this kind of a device would be more secure because it's not connected to the internet. This is like we call this a cold storage device. But a hot wallet is really good for getting started because you're able to just buy, like you download anything on your phone, any app. We have a few examples we'll show you. And you can start buying like $50 worth of Bitcoin at a time just to see what it's like. I think it's best to start small and just start testing Bitcoin. This is how I learned. It's how I know a lot of other people learned. And it's like, if you want to learn how to use email, you'd probably just create an email account and send a couple test emails versus like your first time using email is for like the big master project that you got to submit to your boss or your school paper, right? That's a pretty stressful first time to be using email. You kind of would rather test it out. So that's what we recommend for Bitcoin is just download a wallet onto your phone, try it out. Don't take a screenshot of your words, write them down and just keep building up from there. As you start to learn more and kind of buy more Bitcoin, you can take more security of your Bitcoin and use a cold storage wallet, kind of like this. I like to think of a cold storage wallet kind of like a safe. Like I like using the gold example a lot because we all know gold, we all know these physical things. And if Bitcoin's new, it kind of helps to think of it as a physical thing to kind of understand its purpose. So this is like a safe in your house. It's meant for larger amount. It's ultra secure. But if you're just buying like $50 worth of Bitcoin and learning, you don't necessarily need to start off with one of these, but you want to think about getting one of these pretty soon because eventually, even that little bit of Bitcoin you have will be worth something special in the future. And one thing I always tell people is that you don't want to treat your $10 million, you want to treat your Bitcoin like it's worth $10 million before it's worth $10 million. Because once it's already worth $10 million, you don't want to be playing catch up on your security, on your understanding of Bitcoin. You kind of want to secure it so that you're ready to use it to its full potential and securely in the future. And so seed phrases are the best way to go about this. This is a Blockstream Jade. If anyone's curious, this is probably one of the best wallets that we recommend here at Bitcoin Well. It's cheap, it's ultra secure, and this wallet has open source software, which basically means all of the software has been posted online so that a bunch of people can just look at it and verify that it's legit. And there's not any like secret, button in there that says give Konrad all the Bitcoin, right? There's nothing like that exists. These wallets are ultra secure. They're very cheap. It's what I would standardly recommend for anybody to get started with Bitcoin. And so yeah, BlueWallet is another one. This is what I was mentioning. If you're going to get started on your phone, basically you can just download this on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Download it. You can set up your wallet in a moment. You'll see the 24 words kind of pop up on your screen as I showed you earlier. This is great for getting started. And then you'd want to move to a hardware wallet, something like the Blockstream Jade. Once you're ready to start securing your Bitcoin, you're kind of not experimenting anymore. Maybe you've got it, you get it a little bit, and you want to just start accumulating more Bitcoin for the future, which I would, personally think is a good idea, especially with, the price kind of going down a little bit. It means that every time you buy Bitcoin, you're getting more Bitcoin per dollar, which is great. So how do you really download BlueWallet? How do you create a Bitcoin wallet? Is this a hard process? Luckily, it's actually very, very easy and simple. So the BlueWallet is just the example of a wallet that you would keep on your phone. Anyone watching can do this. You could even do this right now. You would go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and type in BlueWallet. The logo itself should be blue, and it should be probably one of the highest rated apps on there because BlueWallet is used by many Bitcoiners. It's open source, so it's very highly regarded, very secure. Once you download the wallet, on the right side of my screen, this kind of Wallets Add Now tab, you'll click on that, and then click on the Bitcoin wallet, and then you'll see your 12 or 24 words. You do not want to screenshot that. What you want to do is write those down and save them. And then, and it might be a little bit small on my screen here, but basically what you're seeing is just a bunch of random letters when you click on the wallet. And these are not the 24 words. We call this in Bitcoin the receiving address. You can think of this as like your bank account number. So it's like, if I want to send you money, I send it to your bank account number. That's what a receiving address is. It's kind of like your inbox for Bitcoin. So when you're signing up with Bitcoin Well, we don't hold on to your Bitcoin for you. We're not a bank. Like those other folks that hold on to your Bitcoin for you, a bunch of them have kind of imploded and lost customer Bitcoin along the way. We think that's a really risky way to go about serving Bitcoin to people. We think that Bitcoin was invented so that you could be your own bank. And like then buying Bitcoin, leaving it in a bank just seems kind of like antithetical to why Bitcoin was invented in the first place. So we think that it's best for Bitcoin to go directly to your wallet. So here's how you would do that is you would take this receiving address and you would add it into your Bitcoin Well account. So when you buy Bitcoin, every time you purchase Bitcoin, we automatically send the Bitcoin directly to your wallet. That means you're always in full control of all of your Bitcoin. You never have to ask us, hey, Bitcoin Well, could I have my Bitcoin back? Like if you have a lot of Bitcoin on Coinbase and you want to withdraw it all, they're probably not going to let you withdraw it all in one go. They will probably make you wait, maybe withdraw a little bit at a time. Kind of just like when you go to a regular bank and you would want to withdraw, say $10,000 to, repair or renovate your bathroom. They're going to be like, oh, why are you withdrawing so much cash? We don't even have this much cash at the moment. We can't give it this all to you at once. It's like, that's the banking system. That's the banking system is full of these restrictions. Bitcoin in your own wallet doesn't have those restrictions. You can send any amount, anytime, anywhere. So how does our portal work? How do you start buying? What are the fees? So in Canada, we have a pretty sweet way of sending money around. It's called e-transfer. It's super fast. If you're in Canada, I'm sure you've used it. You love it. That's how we send Bitcoin. Send money to start buying Bitcoin in Canada. You send the dollars. Upon receiving the dollars, which typically happens within 30 seconds, maybe up to a minute, Bitcoin Well will automatically convert those dollars into Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin will be sent on its way to you. We batch these transactions, basically meaning the transactions will be free. So the transactions might take a couple hours for you to arrive in your wallet, just due to how transactions for Bitcoin are processed. but it will arrive to you for free. And the only fee that you will spend is a 1.2% spread fee. There are no other fees. There's no hidden transaction costs, nothing like that. And this is the exact same for the United States as well. We have just a 1.2% spread, very simple. Once you send a transfer to Bitcoin Wallet, it takes a few days for that transfer to go through. But once it goes through, you can instantly buy Bitcoin and send it out. Or you could even buy Bitcoin and pull money from your bank at the same time in the United States. And when you do this, you actually lock in the rate of your Bitcoin. So today's Friday. It takes several business days for me to buy Bitcoin if I live in the States, or to move money around if I live in the States. Bitcoin's at about 83,000 USD. I think it's going to get bottom here. So I make an instant buy on the American portal. This would lock in the rate of 83K. So even if over this weekend Bitcoin doubles, which would be great, Bitcoin doubles to 160K, I still am purchasing Bitcoin at the 83K because that's where I locked in my rate. So for folks in the States, I know you might be a little envious of Canada's fast bank-to-bank transfers through e-transfer, but you can still instantly buy Bitcoin and in effect, buy the dip, smash buy, make a quick purchase and lock in that rate. And even though the Bitcoin will arrive a little bit later, you still get the Bitcoin at the rate that you locked in at the beginning. So that is pretty sweet. That's pretty, watch out for our folks down in the States. So if you're watching this and you're wondering how do you get set up, how do you start buying Bitcoin? It's super easy. Download BlueWallet, get that set up, add it to that receiving address to your Bitcoin Wallet account and start buying Bitcoin. This is real Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin held in exchange that you don't even know if it's really there. Like, do we know if the banks have all their money? Do we know if the crypto banks have all their Bitcoin and all their crypto? Like, we really don't. But you know that your Bitcoin is in your wallet and it's actually there because you can easily verify this anywhere because Bitcoin is transparent. These crypto exchanges, they're not transparent. Your wallet is transparent, which means you know that the Bitcoin is actually there. If you're looking at buying larger amounts, maybe you've already got a Bitcoin wallet set up, or maybe you're looking to make just larger amounts because you've sold a house. You realize that maybe stocks aren't the best investment or banks aren't the best investment for you right now. Then buying larger amounts of Bitcoin is definitely something that we are capable of facilitating for you. The fees are actually a little bit lower for this. They go down to 1%. And these larger transactions have a minimum threshold of $50,000 or more. Our Bitcoin Wallet Infinite team will help you with these large transactions. We'll walk you through the process. This is a very white glove service. We are going to handhold you throughout the process. We're going to make sure that you have a Bitcoin strategy that you're comfortable with, and we will move forward with that strategy. And our team of experts will be able to help advise you on maybe crafting a Bitcoin strategy if that's something that you're challenged with at the moment. So, and it's pretty straightforward. Canada and America have a little bit of a different system of buying Bitcoin. In Canada, you're sending an e-transfer, and then that's going to be the amount that you want to buy. In the United States, you connect your bank account and you pull dollars from your bank account. You're not able to just straight up send from your bank, but you can pull the dollars. And as I mentioned earlier, while pulling those dollars, you can make an instant purchase that will lock in your Bitcoin rate. This basically means that if you want to buy Bitcoin quickly, it's a weekend, it's a Friday, you're gonna be able to lock in that rate. This is really good because sometimes Bitcoin moves fast and sometimes you want to buy the dip quickly. So this is really useful for that. The way that I typically buy Bitcoin and the way that I recommend most folks to buy Bitcoin isn't actually to try and snipe the dip or buy quickly when the price falls or moves in a certain way. I think it's best to buy Bitcoin regularly. Just buy a little bit every week, every 2 weeks, every month even. And what this does is it means that every time you're buying Bitcoin, you're not even thinking about it. It's automatic, which saves you up like stress in your mind, but also you're capturing all these different price movements. You're buying every dip, but you're buying it frequently because you're just always buying. You get constant price exposure. And this is really good because if Bitcoin ever gets to a price where people get scared, that's the best time to buy. And it's best to just not have to think about that in a fearful situation. Just be buying, always be buying. And then you'll always be getting more Bitcoin. And that's a good thing because there's only 21 million Bitcoin. So having more is going to be good. And yes, Bitcoin Infinite, we can help you with that. Our team will provide for you a link in the show notes or in the closing the closing page, as well as the follow-up email. Everyone who's listening here is going to get a follow-up email with recording of this presentation, as well as links to get started, links to download a Blue Wallet or purchase a Jade wallet. And if you're looking to make larger purchases, maybe you're a little bit ready to kind of dive in, We'll also give you a booking link for our Bitcoin Wallet Infinite team, so you can meet a Bitcoin Wallet advisor and start buying large amounts of Bitcoin right away. If you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, maybe you're really interested in Bitcoin, you want to learn some of the deeper dives, do a deep dive on some of the how Bitcoin works. I didn't cover every aspect of how Bitcoin works because we call it going down the rabbit hole because it's very exciting to learn about some of these more complicated topics in Bitcoin. Like how does Bitcoin security work? When new Bitcoins are created, like what is Bitcoin mining? These are all very exciting topics that are important, but not necessarily vital to learn when you're first learning about Bitcoin. I think the principles that I outlined about how Bitcoin is scarce, how Bitcoin is better than government money in terms of inflation, because we know exactly that there won't be more than 21 million Bitcoin, or that Bitcoin is censorship resistant, or that the Bitcoin is capped at a certain inflation rate. All these things you can learn more about through our Bitcoin Academy. This is a free online course. Instead of listening to me talk, you're going to have some really fun short videos. Have you seen like those short educational videos on YouTube where you're like, wow, like I loved learning? That's what the Bitcoin Academy feels like. Next thing you know, after a few hours of watching these videos, you'll be like, wow, I learned so much about Bitcoin. We'll give you a little certificate, letting you know that you've completed the Bitcoin Academy. And then you'll be very experienced. You'll be able to, pretty much dive right into the deep end and be an advanced a Bitcoin user. So that pretty much concludes today's Bitcoin for Beginners presentation, first one of the year. Thank you everyone for making it with me. At Bitcoin Well, we really think that Bitcoin is important because it gives you freedom and independence. And one of the things that we do specifically at Bitcoin Well is help you use your Bitcoin in self-custody. We want to future-proof your money. So not only do you have the scarcest, best, most decentralized financial asset out there, Bitcoin, but we also enable you to use your Bitcoin in the traditional financial world, because right now, banks are kind of very convenient to use when it comes to paying bills, sending money around to friends, various things like paying a mortgage. All these things your banks need to do for you. But with Bitcoin Well, we are constantly building new ways for you to use your Bitcoin in self-custody and bridging that gap between the regular financial world, so that there is no way that you can't use your Bitcoin. You're able to just fully use your Bitcoin. And that's how we say you're future-proofing your money. If anyone has any questions, yes, please ask them in the chat. We're going to start relaying through those now. If you don't have anything, right now, don't worry about it. But if a question ever pops up in your head during the Q&A, please do share.
Yeah, we could go ahead and start. We have a couple questions.
Perfect. Yeah, let's get into it.
So first from John Smith, excuse me, he says, do you think Bitcoin's transparent security first base layer and layered approach to privacy, let me put it up on screen here, give it a lasting edge over privacy first coins like Monero and Zcash?
This is a great question. I think it's gonna be tough to give really a perfect answer on that, because this kind of might come down a little bit to opinion. To give a little bit more context for the folks that are asking out there. So Bitcoin security first base layer, that basically means we're talking about the main way that we go about something in Bitcoin. This is called the blockchain. Some of you folks may have heard about this. Basically, every 10 minutes, a group of transactions are approved. This is in a pretty slow, intentionally slow and rigorous manner to make sure that everyone, like I said, the tens of thousands of people that are running Bitcoin, kind of all upholding all these rules. This slower transaction approval process is basically to make sure that everyone can verify that transactions are legitimate. At the same time, if too many transactions go through too quickly, a critique would be that, well, this would mean that there's so much information to store. Computers have to get expensive to store all these information. The more expensive a computer is, the less people that are able to run it. And this would impact the tens of thousands of people that are monitoring Bitcoin's rules. If it's not tens of thousands of people and it's only tens of people, then that kind of compromises Bitcoin's decentralization, which is its main form of security and protection. However, coins like Monero and Zcash do have basically security built into this base layer, and they kind of have a privacy aspect first. Bitcoin has a security aspect first in terms of being decentralized, and it opts to use privacy on kind of the higher layers. The way I would describe this is like, if Bitcoin is a highway and everyone can see this highway, and maybe this highway can have some traffic, That's good because we want to monitor the highway, make sure that all the cars are following the rules. Layer 2 would kind of be like an underground subway where cars can move really, really, really fast, but not everyone really sees what's going on. Now, this is good because those cars moving underground are now kind of moving privately. You can't see them from above. So that's kind of how Bitcoin has opted to set up its privacy, whereas Monero and Zcash are basically just underground private from the get-go. One of the critiques of this privacy-first focus is that you can't actually see, everyone can't necessarily confirm how many cars exist as easily. With Bitcoin, it's transparent blockchain, only 21 million coins. It's like a highway on the street, a highway. Like everyone can see all the cars, which means we can count all the cars, make sure there aren't being too many. With these underground tunnels as being a default, we can't as easily verify the total number of cars, which kind of makes the scarcity aspect a little bit less secure. For example, if I just made a bunch of cars really secretly and they were all underground in this Monero or Zcash world, it would be hard for other people to tell. Whereas with Bitcoin, we know for a fact I cannot make extra cars because they're all out in plain view. I hope that kind of analogy helps.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I also think it's important to think about when looking at other crypto that Bitcoin is really set apart in just how it was created. It was designed to be decentralized from the beginning. It wasn't created with the expectation that you would make money or profit off of it. It was just, let me solve these problems from a technical point of view, and it solved them. And so the world then valued those solutions and over time gave value to Bitcoin. Anything else made after that and all these cryptos is designed with a profit first. And it's not going to be focused on decentralization and guaranteeing all these securities that Bitcoin has set up. So just be very cautious, dabbling in these things. This is why we are Bitcoin only focused company, because it really does set itself apart from everything else on the market.
Yeah, Zach, that was a great addition to the answer. The context of when and why Bitcoin was created is so important, and everything that has come after it since potentially has a clouded motive of seeking profit. The day that the Bitcoin white paper was released was October 31st in 2008. And this is pretty much when the financial crisis was happening. So Bitcoin is a direct response to the banks and government kind of making a team to kind of act fraudulent and basically profit. And Bitcoin's whole point was to protect people from fraudulent banks and bad government actors.
Yeah. Real quick, this isn't much of an answer here, but question, could you offer a tutorial for using Blockstream Jade to move Bitcoin from ShakesPay app? We are going to be doing a lot more tutorials soon of hardware wallets and of software wallets. So yes, definitely look out for those because we are going to do that. Some of those exist out there already if you want to look them up, but we are going to be producing some of those for you guys as well.
Yeah, Sandra, this is a great question. I have some friends that are in a similar boat. They started buying Bitcoin on ShakePay. They have a decent amount of Bitcoin on ShakePay, and now they're like, I'm afraid to take it off because it's a lot of money. What I suggested for folks that are buying Bitcoin for the first time, I think would apply for you as well, Sandra, is try just withdrawing a little bit off of ShakePay to your Jade wallet. Maybe start with like $10 or $20. Once that process works, then you might feel more confident kind of doing more. One tip that I've heard is, you have your Jade wallet, you set up your private key for it, which is those words. You back them up, written down on your sheet of paper, not screenshotted, wherever you keep it safely. And then you reset your device. This basically means you kind of wipe all the information off of it. You just remove its memory or clean its memory, and then you re-upload your private key into here. What that does is that it kind of makes sure that you've recorded your private key correctly. If anything happens, your backup is still valid. And I think, Sandra, that will give you more confidence in withdrawing your Bitcoin from ShakePay and putting onto your wallet, because then you know that you're fully in control of your Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, in conjunction with that, if you want to test like a $10 transaction first, send it on there and then maybe even send it back off to make sure you can send and receive, and then reset it, like you said, and re-put in your seed words to make sure you can regenerate that wallet. Then you'll know for sure when you regenerate that wallet, if you see that transaction history of that $10 that you did, you'll know for sure you have the same exact wallet and everything is working like it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. So the next question, I have a Bitcoin investment account, but I get resistance from my Bitcoin broker when I need to take some money out of it. Why is that?
Thank you, Megan, for this. So there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is go to your bank and try and withdraw, $10,000. They'll probably give you a hard time. People that make a business of holding on to your money, they don't like not holding on to it. That's how they make their money. You may have heard about banks, have way more loans than they have dollars, is because if I give $1,000 to a bank, that bank will then loan out $1,000 like 10 times. They'll make 10 $1,000 loans based on my single $1,000 deposit. So that's already an issue. That's one reason. The second reason is, and this might not be the case, but if you have someone that is investing Bitcoin on your behalf, there are a lot of risks with that. They might be using something like AI trading, which might not actually be AI trading. It might just be like a fake website. You basically really want to be careful when you're giving your Bitcoin to anybody else, because they're fully in control of it, and there's no system to really get it back, especially if you're dealing with someone that could be overseas. There's no there's no framework to obtain that Bitcoin from them, and basically bad actors can use Bitcoin's best principles kind of against some people. So because Bitcoin transactions cannot be censored, they cannot be forcibly withdrawn, or they cannot be shut down. That means if I give away my Bitcoin to a bad guy or to a liar, there's no way for me to get that money back. This kind of means that we want to really be careful with our Bitcoin. We really don't want to be giving it to anybody unless we're very sure that we're making something like a purchase for that. Bitcoin is already an extremely long-term, appreciating asset. How Bitcoin outperforms every other asset is pretty much uncomparable. So you don't need to do anything with your Bitcoin other than just hold it yourself, and time will work for you. And with every other investment asset, time works against you. But with Bitcoin, time actually works for you. So just hold your Bitcoin in self-custody. With regard to your Bitcoin investment account, I would maybe advise you to reach out to our support team. It's hello@bitcoinwell.com. They can give you some assistance with that. But yeah, I would advise against using any kind of Bitcoin investment advisor, because unless you're holding the Bitcoin in your own wallet, you're holding the Bitcoin in somebody else's wallet, and that's risky. And that's not what Bitcoin was invented for. Bitcoin was invented for you to hold the Bitcoin yourself.
100%. Next one, we kind of answered this already, Sandra, but I figured we'd just settle it real quick. So is there a way of triple checking my seed words for the Jade? I do have it set up and I have the seed words on Steel. I feel nervous wondering if I got it right. I think what we were saying earlier is a great way to just verify for yourself. So send that test transaction, trying to send it off, make sure you can send and receive, and then reset the device to factory reset and put your words back in and make sure that you can get back to your original state. And that way, before you move all your funds onto the device, you feel confident that you know how to do that. And I'd recommend to people trying to make a habit of doing that yearly. Make sure you remember the process, because if you wait 5 or 10 years and then you have an issue and you're trying to scramble and remember it, and you're in panic mode because you had an issue, so you're, oh my God, where's all my Bitcoin? And you may forget that process. But if you do this regularly, yearly or whatever works best for you, then you'll feel confident and have that in your long-term memory about how to do it and make sure you do it right.
Yeah. And also, one quick thing too is that you might notice an order, or a word next to each of your words. The order does matter. So if my words are apple banana milkshake, it can't just be banana apple milkshake or milkshake banana apple. It's got to be that specific order. So that's another important thing. If you just wrote down the words in a notebook, make sure to maybe go back when you're double checking them and write down the words, because the number, because if you have, let's say, a few columns, you might not remember exactly which order. Do the words go this way? Do they go that way? So you want to have the number there to guide you.
Exactly.
And sorry, one more note. So on the steel plates, I think I have one tucked away here. But basically, a steel plate will only show you the first 4 letters of your word. And because you're not depending on which kind you have. The ones that we offer at Bitcoin Well display only the first 4 letters. This is actually totally okay. You might say, well, underground and underwear have the same first 4 letters, but they're very different words. And while this is true, the Bitcoin list of words that you can use for a seed phrase are carefully selected in every single language to only cover words that are unique. So if you have underground, that will be the only word that will have UNDE as the first 4 letters. So there's no way to mess this up. And if you write UNDE as your word and you don't remember if it's underground, underwear, underwater, whatever, then your Bitcoin wallet will already know, because there's a list of 2,048 words. And if you enter those first 4 letters into a software like Bitcoin software wallet, then that word will kind of be pre-filled and then finished for you. So there's not an opportunity for you to make a mistake if you have the correct first 4 letters.
All right, next question is, I can't get verified by Bitcoin Well where I live. Where I live does not allow us to get mail. So I have a mailing address and a physical address. My physical address is on my license. Can anyone help? We may have to help you offline with this if you want to. Do we have what's our email for questions?
Yeah, Darva, we'll make sure to put it up on. I think we only have, let's see, the questions doesn't cut. You're gonna want to write to hello@bitcoinwell.com. I'm not sure if there's a way, Zach, we can throw it up on screen, but yeah, hello@bitcoinwell.com. This is our support desk. If you write an email to hello@bitcoinwell.com, then our team will be able to, thank you, Zach, that is up on screen. That is the place where our support team will be able to assist you with your Bitcoin account issue, or even the folks that, or the person that mentioned they had an issue withdrawing funds from their Bitcoin advisor. We might be able to help you out there as well. So yeah, hello@bitcoinwell is your place for all things Bitcoin Wallet support.
Cool. And next question. So how do I keep my purchase/sale confidential so the bank or government does not know?
All right. So this is an interesting question. So if you live in Canada, fortunately, you have a few more options. So in Canada, we have a network of ATMs. ATMs are available in the United States as well. The fees on these are typically going to be a little bit higher. But when you use an ATM, you're just inserting cash, and that cash, you scan a Bitcoin wallet, and that ATM just processes the cash and sends it right to that Bitcoin wallet. ATM fees can get pretty expensive. They go anywhere from 12 to 18%, which is substantial. But in Bitcoin Well, we have a pretty awesome tool. We call it the Lite account. It's basically an online account where all you do is sign up with an email address and a Bitcoin wallet. No more information is needed. And then when you go to one of our Bitcoin Well, we operate actually ATMs in Canada. So when you go up to one of our ATMs, you can scan a QR code found in your Lite account, and then this will connect the ATM to your Lite account. So when you insert cash, that cash shows up in your Lite account, and you can buy Bitcoin. This happens for a net fee of only 7%, and there are no ID verifications involved. So there's nothing tying the purchase to your ID. These transactions do have a limit of $1,000 per transaction, $950 per transaction, and up to $3,000 per day. This is just because of how the regulations work in that manner. That would probably be the best bet. The banks in Canada, if you're sending an e-transfer, might give you a hard time. Banks don't like it when you take money away from them. And they don't like Bitcoin as well, because Bitcoin is got a huge competition to what the banking system does. The government, knowing this, might be a little bit more challenging. You probably would want to go in that private way. A really great way to buy Bitcoin privately is to find a community of Bitcoiners that you trust, that you know in person, and then you can buy that from them peer to peer. Like, for example, if I wanted to buy $500 worth of Bitcoin, I could call up my friend Zach and say, "Hey Zach, can you send me $500 worth of Bitcoin? I'll give you $500 in cash," and then we'll arrange this transaction and we'll do it. But obviously, if I don't know the person I'm buying from, this could be a bit of a riskier thing. So Bitcoin Well is probably going to be your best bet. As far as keeping your purchase confidential so the government doesn't know, one of the best things you can do is just not sell your Bitcoin, because selling your Bitcoin is a taxable event, and that's where folks might be kind of watching for you, watching for the transactions, watching for taxes that need to be paid. But if you just hold on to your Bitcoin and you're not selling it, there's not really anything to kind of pay attention to. Your Bitcoin is the safest when you're holding it yourself. And if you don't sell it, there's not any taxes to kind of follow there. Hopefully these answers are good enough. Some folks are a little bit more worried about surveillance or governments following them. So you might want to opt for a more expensive private option like ATMs. But I think for most folks, just buying and storing and not selling is probably going to be a good, safe approach there.
For sure. Yeah, just to add on to that too, that is one of the magic things about Bitcoin is being able to sell it and buy it peer to peer just with a friend. So like a few weeks ago, I helped my mom get set up with a Bitcoin wallet, and she wasn't set up on any exchange yet. So I said, "Hey, you have some cash? You could just buy Bitcoin for me right now," and I sent it right to her wallet. It's like magic. Like it is peer to peer, person to person. So that's always an option. All right, next question. Oh, can I have both of your email addresses? Was that
Yeah.
your email in that slide?
Yes, I have my email here. So that's me, k.fitz at bitcoinwell.com. If you have any general questions, not support related, because I can't really assist you with support, we'd have to reach out to hello@bitcoinwell.com. But if you have questions about, getting a little question about something I said in the presentation today, feel free to shoot me an email, or Zach Adair. We got right there. Either of us, we're happy to give you a hand. We learned about Bitcoin by other people that knew about Bitcoin, right? Like there's not like, we didn't go to Bitcoin University. We didn't read government, university textbooks about Bitcoin. We just learned this from other people that really knew about Bitcoin. So we're happy to help you because that's how we learned. So we're happy to help. If you are looking to do larger transactions, if you really want to maybe make a big transaction, meet with a Bitcoin advisor, and make a transaction of 50K or larger, then shoot an email to otc@bitcoinwallet.com, and our Bitcoin Infinite team will be able to help you with your large transaction.
Cool. All right, this one we might need some clarification, Richard, if we're not if we get this wrong. But you said, how do I set up the secure phrase once I have the key codes? I think you're talking about the seed phrase, and there is only the one main phrase. So when you first set up a wallet, you're going to have your one seed phrase, and then that will give you a public key, which is different. Your private key is your seed phrase, and that is your Bitcoin wallet. That will let you generate that wallet again on any other software. But yeah, if we didn't answer your question, you might need to rephrase that and send it again, but I think that was the answer. And then last question in the list. Again, if you have any other questions, please go ahead and put them in. Now's the time. Hello, thanks for the informative session. With the 21 million Bitcoin cap, what happens when a multi-billionaire buys a huge chunk and then not enough for the masses? Can that happen?
This is a good question, and this is actually a critique that we hear about Bitcoin a lot, but it's not necessarily the most accurate. So yes, there are 21 million Bitcoin. I can buy 1 million Bitcoin. I can buy 20 million Bitcoin, but I can also buy a small fraction of a Bitcoin. Like one Bitcoin is worth 83,000 US dollars, about 113,000 Canadian dollars. I don't need 83,000 US dollars just to buy Bitcoin. I can buy Bitcoin with $10 at a time. And what that means, I'll get like what we call fractions of a Bitcoin Satoshis, the same way we call fractions of a dollar cents. In a dollar, there's 100 cents or 100 pennies. In Bitcoin, there's 100 million Satoshis. So when you're buying a fraction of a Bitcoin, you're getting Satoshis. And once you get 100 million of these, you have one whole Bitcoin. But you don't need a whole Bitcoin to be a Bitcoiner, to hold Bitcoin, to be a Bitcoin holder. You just need any amount of Bitcoin, ideally in self-custody. So when someone buys a lot of Bitcoin, that means that they bought a lot of Bitcoin. They could have bought, 73.455555321 Bitcoin, right? 75 Bitcoin and a bunch of sats. But what this means is that the amount of Bitcoin that's going to be available is going to be less. Supply and demand economics will kick in. So if there's more demand than there is supply, the price will go up. And what makes Bitcoin kind of special is that for anything, when the price goes up, you can make more of it. So for example, gold hit $5,000 yesterday, right? It was $2,000 not that long ago. By the price of gold more than doubling, that means all those gold mining operations that couldn't extract gold because it wasn't profitable can now do so. Us in Canada, we have the oil sands. This oil is bad. It is not good quality oil. It requires a lot of refinement, a lot of cost to make this oil usable. That means that our oil is can only be profitably extracted at say $80 a barrel. But if the price of oil hits $200 a barrel, you bet we're going to be extracting all that expensive oil out of the ground, and it's still going to be profitable. because we can make more of it because the price went up. When the price is $30 a barrel, we can't really extract it, right? So you can see how supply can kind of be tied to demand for most things. But because Bitcoin's locked at $21 million, like 20 million Bitcoin, like you meant, like you clarified, this is not going to happen. So the only thing that can increase is not the amount of Bitcoin that's being made, but the price. So that means when lots of people are buying lots of Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin is going to increase. But also because there are millions of people that hold Bitcoin, there's always going to be someone that's selling it. There's always going to be some amount of Bitcoin that's being sold. So it's not like Zach can go in here and buy billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, and then all the Bitcoin's gone and no one can buy anymore. You'll always be able to still buy Bitcoin. There will always be someone selling it. And what that means is the fractions of Bitcoin that are being sold are just going to be more expensive than they were in the past.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I think that's all of our questions right now. If we want to.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Everyone, thank you so very much for attending. Big shout out to everybody that asked the question. I'm sure that I hope that we helped you out, but I also hope that maybe someone else in the audience had the same question as you, and maybe they learned a little bit better as well. If you are watching and you wanted to maybe relearn something or recap on something that we mentioned today, don't worry, we're going to be sending you a copy of this webinar. You're going to get an email for that later on today, so keep an eye out in your inbox. If you want to keep learning, go to bitcoinwell.com/learn. This is where we have the Bitcoin Academy that we discussed earlier. You can learn there for free. Keep learning more about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a beautiful thing to learn about. It's an incredible technology that helps everyday folks like you and me. And that's how we are able to keep our savings secure and into the future. Self-custody is the way to go. Make sure to take care of your seed phrase. And if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to myself or Zach, or if it's a support-related question, make sure to contact hello@bitcoinwell.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys next time.
We'll catch you next time. Bye.